Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 4 in our continuing study of this book. In chapter 3, had chapter 3 start off with the phrase, my son. That's going to be each one time we see the beginning of a new section. There were exhortations to wise living and its benefits, verses 1 through 10. The next, my son, was in verse 11, that kicked off an ode to wisdom, talked about wisdom in creation, how God valued wisdom. My son, chapter 3, verse 21, there were exhortations to wise living and practical advice on various areas of life, and we saw the 7 do nots, followed by 3 contrasts. And finally, now we come to chapter 4 and verse 1, where we pick up hero sons. Again, that's a new section. And these will be filled with exhortations of wise living and its benefits. That sounds like what we said about chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. And we're coming back to that. We're coming full circle. So chapter 4 and verse 1, hear, O sons, and this is, this is the next sons and new section, the instruction of a father. So here's a call to hear. Back in chapter 3, we had fathers and mothers mentioned. We're going to see that again in just a moment. But here it's the instructions of a father, and give attention that you may gain understanding. For I give you sound teaching, do not abandon my instruction. Actually, those 2 verses are going to summarize the entire chapter. When I was a son to my father, tender and the only son in the sight of my mother. Notice the reference to both father and mother, just like we had in chapter 3. Then he taught me and said to me, and here's what he taught. This is relaying those past instructions. Let your heart hold fast my words. Keep my commandments and live. Acquire wisdom. Acquire understanding. Notice all the verbs here. And then we have a couple of do nots. Do not forget, nor turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will guard you. Notice, love her, the final command. Reminds me of the greatest command, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And then there's a second one that follows that, love your neighbors yourself. But love her, and she will watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is, and this is still quoting the instructions of the Father, but now here's what is the beginning of wisdom. The beginning is, first of all, you have to want it. Acquire wisdom, and with all your acquiring, get understanding. Prize her, and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. So notice the result of acquiring and getting and prizing wisdom is that she'll exalt, she'll honor you if you embrace her, she will place on your head a garland of grace, she will present you with a crown of beauty. All figurative speech for the exaltation that wisdom brings. It brings a good life because it teaches you how to live as long as you acquire it and use it. Hear, my son, and accept my sayings, and the years of your life will be many. So notice, I have directed you in the way of wisdom. I have led you in upright paths. When you walk, your steps will not be impeded. And if you run, you will not stumble. So, let's just face it, there's times in life where you're walking, where you're running. If I was to be honest, I suppose there's times in life where you're where you're at a fast crawl or a slow crawl. But in all of these seasons, hold on to wisdom, and wisdom will serve you well. Take hold of instruction. Do not let go. Guard her, for she is your life. Continuing into verse 14, do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not proceed in the way of evil men. Avoid it. And you say, wait a minute, I thought you said in a previous lecture that there's no it in Hebrew. It's either masculine or feminine. That's true. So I guess you would say, do not avoid him. But the him isn't the wicked. That's plural. Or the evil men. That's plural. But rather, it's the path. So avoid the path, avoid the way, avoid it, do not pass by it, turn away from it and pass on. Now we're talking about the wicked and the evil ones, the evil men. For they cannot sleep unless they do evil, and they are robbed of sleep unless they make someone stumble. Have you ever noticed that evil isn't satisfied in just doing evil itself? It wants to get other people to do evil too. Misery loves company, and evil loves company. For verse 17, for they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. Notice the bread and the wine. It reminds me of how we have an ordinance. We Christians have an ordinance where we eat bread and we drink wine, and we are connecting ourselves to Jesus when we do that. We're connecting ourselves by faith. We're doing outwardly what that represents inwardly. I'm speaking of the Lord's Supper, but there's sort of there's a supper that's not the Lord's Supper. There's a supper of wickedness, the bread of wickedness, the wine of violence, and they want others to partake of that as well. Verse 18, but the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn that shines brighter and brighter until the full day. Now, notice the picture here. You begin the path, and the light of dawn is, when the sun it just begins to come up. If you're out driving in the very early morning, you might put your car lights on because you can't see that well. You can see a little bit, but you can't see it. But it gets better and better. And of course, they didn't have cars back then. But the picture is the path, and you can sort of see your way. But the further you walk, and the more the light comes up, the better it is to see. By contrast, the way of the wicked, notice it's contrasting the path of the righteous, the way of the wicked is like darkness. It doesn't get any brighter. They do not know over what they stumble. And so we have this closing contrast, the righteous versus the wicked. We're not quite done yet. Verse 20, there's a call now to listen and to remember. My son, give attention to my words, incline your ear to my sayings. So notice, give attention, incline your ear, listen up. Do not let them depart from your sight. What's the them? It's my words, my sayings. Do not let them depart from your sight. Keep them in the midst of your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to all their body. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. Life comes from that which you place in your heart. And if you place bad things in your heart, you're going to poison the well, if I can mix my metaphors a bit. But don't do that. From those things in your heart flow the springs of life. Put away from you, notice this call to stay on the right path, put away from you a deceitful mouth and put devious speech far from you. So deceitful mouth, devious speech that's saying the same thing. Put those things away from you. Let your eyes look directly ahead. Let your eyes and your gaze, speaking of the same thing, be fixed straight in front of you. Watch the path of your feet, and all your ways will be established. And finally, verse 27, do not turn to the right or the left. So notice, don't turn a certain way. Don't turn to the right or the left. But then do turn your foot from evil. Now, what I want you to see is how this all fits together in chapter 3 and chapter 4, because this is a unit where we started off back in chapter 3, the exhortations to the wise and living its benefits. It started off, my son. And then we had the ode to wisdom, verses 11 through 20. Remember, wisdom was there with creation and is to be valued. And then the next, my son, was some practical advice on various areas of life. And that took us to the end of chapter 3. And here in chapter 4, now we've seen exhortations to the wise and living its benefits. Again, we started off, hear, O sons, so that we began as we end. We began with that call, don't forget. And now we end the very last verse, don't turn. Hold on to wisdom. Don't turn from its path. Hold on, hold on, hold on to the Lord. Hold on to faith. Hold on to wisdom.